my great pleasure to welcome you today, Karl. My name is Cynthia Grund, and I'm Associate Professor of Philosophy here at the University of Southern Denmark, and always very pleased to be hosting this series. And let's see, we have over here Johnny.
Yeah, hi, my name is Johnny Harboe, and I'm a Master in Comparative Literature here from the SDU, and I'm very much interested in metal music studies. I've been listening to metal for many years, and looking very much forward to this lecture.
Good.
Hello, my name is Thomas, and I'm here because of my interest in heavy metal music.
Good to have you here, Thomas.
Hello, my name is Vitus Vestergaard, and I'm an assistant professor here at the University of Southern Denmark. I'm in media studies, but I'm also part of this small group where we're trying to do some small projects in metal music studies. One thing we did just recently, and it's actually still on. We just did an exhibition at the local museum. It's just called the Media Museum, on the visual side of metal music. So it's band logos and album covers and things like that.
Okay, good.
It's been very successful, by the way, and you've become a real media darling, Vitus.
Oh, I don't know.
It's on TV and in the papers, and it's all very wonderful.
Well, the media has been very interested in this topic, I must say, yes.
Yeah, they really have been.
Yeah.
Okay.
I am Mogens Davis, in immediate danger of becoming a metalhead, but part of this group where we investigate, for the moment, the metal music and the implications of it. Yeah.
By the way, can you hear everyone without any trouble?
I can hear absolutely perfect.
Okay, very good. Jarl.
I'm Jarl, and I'm the resident ontology expert.
As we say, you never should be without one. So, Jarl did a master's degree on ontology a few years ago, and yeah, he's always here to help us keep our Zine straight. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Hello, my name is Lisa Illum, and I'm here because I'm interested in metal music.
Welcome, Lisa. You were with us, I think, the first time last week, so
Yeah,
good to see you
it was
again.
very interesting.
Great. Yes, it was your brother, so.
I know, but apart from that, it was also very interesting.
Okay. Yes, please.
My name is Lisa, and I don't know so much about metal, but I'd like to know more.
Okay, then this is the place to be.
Yeah.
And my name is Kai Nielsen, and I'm just also want to hear about the subject.
Okay.
I find it interesting.
Welcome to both of you. I believe it's your first time here. We're
First
very
time
happy
here,
to
yes.
welcome you.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
And my name is Greta. I come from Lithuania, and I started my master's in politics, actually. But I've been a metalhead before, and I'm still in with that passion. So.
Yes. Excellent. Well, I think everybody has now been introduced, and just to make things absolutely clear about how these cameras are functioning, this camera, Karl, is the one that is our webcam that I don't know, do we even need to have that on the screen now? I'm trying to figure, we don't need that, right? Because you're taking the YouTube video. So what we can do is we can sort of just retire this camera a bit, and then when we get to the discussion, you can see the room and see who's here and asking questions. So the last thing that we will do then before we start your talk is for the benefit of the lawyers here at SDU. I always ask on camera if everyone gives his or her consent to having his or her image appear on the YouTube video we will be making, and whatever comments you might make can also end up being on that video. So that's good. Everybody has accepted. You've accepted, Karl. So by all means, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thanks for everyone for inviting me onto this. This is the first ever time I've done a Skype lecture. It's the fourth time I've ever been on Skype, so I'm fairly new to this. So if all the technology fails, I'm very sorry, I'm just a beginner. but I consider myself a bit of an expert on metal music studies. I've been involved in the International Society for Metal Music Studies. I'm the editor of the journal Metal Music Studies. And I've also been doing research on metal music studies since 2005, so 10 years researching heavy metal. This afternoon I want to talk about a paper I published a few years ago called Too Old to Raise the Horns, Getting Older on the Metal Scene and the Politics of Intentionality, a case study of second generation Norwegian black metal bands. Now, with each day, metal fans and metal musicians lose their hair. I mean, look at me, I'm balding, I'm going grey, I've got to wear spectacles, I get confused about the gigs I've been to. I must have missed 2 or 3 gigs in the past 2 years, just because I forget, I'm getting old. So everybody gets old, this is just a fact of life. And in the sociology of leisure, there's been quite a few people, such as Andy Bennett and Paul Hodkinson, talking about the way in which subcultures survive, adapt, or die out when the people in them get old or get older. And scholars in leisure studies, such as Chris Rojek, have talked about the way in which people use leisure spaces and leisure scenes, leisure subcultures, leisure activities, like heavy metal, as a means of maintaining and performing a certain intentional stance. That's the stance of identity, belonging, resistance, agency. I'm interested that there's the second wave of Norwegian black metal that appeared in the early 1990s. When these guys were around in the early 1990s, they were quite extreme. We had people being killed, we had the church burnings, we had Varg Vikernes from Burzum becoming a neo-Nazi, and this whole kind of anti-establishment teenage rebellion against modernity, against modern society, essentially defined that black metal scene. So what happens now? What happens when it's 20 years on, 25 years on, 30 years on? What are the black metal musicians doing now? Are they maintaining their satanic, evil, right-wing Nazi affiliations, or are they developing completely new projects, or are they indeed moving into other forms of music to try and gain their credibility? And that's where this particular research project came about. That was the rationale. Like all my research, it essentially involved me reading things on the internet, and for this one in particular, looking at 2 UK-based extreme metal magazines. The first one, Terrorizer, the second one, Zero Tolerance. Both of them seem to be kind of authentic, true, extreme metal magazines. They've been around for some years. Terrorizer was around in the 1990s, Zero Tolerance started in the 2000s, and both of them are still seen now as authentic magazines. So if you're a black metal musician trying to sell your career, yourself, your identity as an authentic extreme metal musician, this is the place where you're going to be interviewed. So I looked at a number of bands. So these are the bands that are considered to be the iconic black metal bands. So Burzum, Mayhem, Darkthrone, Immortal, Ulver, and Enslaved. So what did I find? Well, quite unsurprisingly, each band has a kind of slightly different relationship to his own past and the kind of the biological fact of getting older. So staying true, and if you excuse me, I just need to find this quote. Immortal, excellent band, returned with a new album in 2009, and in publicity shots for Terrorizer magazine, it was as if the last 15 years have never happened. Immortal are there in the forest, in uncompromising black metal poses, standing under pine trees, wearing corpse paint, wearing studs and spikes and black cloaks. But Demonaz, the songwriter of the band, is actually no longer part of the live band. He's too old, he's too injured to play live in the band. And he says, reflecting on the past, when we're making music, we're 12 years old. Abba will call me at 4 in the morning. Demonaz, listen to this, listen. Then I'll be, I can't have a fucking guitar, play it clean. We are easy, we're like fucking children. We're the kids we were 15, 16 years ago. And he continues looking back on their career and says, we were never fake for anything. Either you hate us or you love us. We're not against culture, but we wouldn't want to be a culture band. We're a punk band. We don't care. We want the money ourselves. Fuck off. I think that is striving against black metal. So for Immortal, there is no difference whatsoever. They are, in fact, older, and Demonaz can no longer play guitar, and the original band is no longer there, and there's been a kind of lineup changes. But they project this positionality of rebelliousness with an authenticity associated with the scene. So Immortal tried to play it completely straight. Even though, as anyone who's seen Immortal or their videos will know, Immortal, they may be true, but they're also very, very camp and very, very funny. In another magazine article, By the Vicarness of Burzum essentially repeats everything that he said when he was in prison, everything that he said when he was murdering people and getting involved in all the other scandals. But he does, whilst he's very right-wing and very anti-establishment, he does reflect on the change to becoming an older person. So he says, when I had long hair, when I was dreaming of a fantasy world, living life free of responsibilities, this was the moment when he was committing these crimes and doing these things that he considered to be stupid. But of course, Wagner has kind of retreated from the black metal world altogether. Dark Throne, again, they are one of the bands who completely reinvented themselves, shedding the black metal corpse paint and the kind of the 1990s black metal sound for a kind of a reinvented 1980s old school thrash death denim vest covered in band patches culture. And this reinvention is presented as staying true to their roots. So in a 2020 issue of Terrorizer, Fenriz discussed his love of traditional heavy metal and his commitment to remaining true to his younger self. So Fenriz keeps on saying, hey, look at me, I'm a true metaler, I was in metal long before black metal, because I was around in the 80s, and here's all the influences that made me a metal musician, and I'm more authentic than you, and he kind of waves his finger when he says this, I'm more authentic than you because I've got all these genuine 1980s vinyl. So Dark Throne pretend they've got this unbroken history fighting for the counterculture. But Fenriz himself is aware of the contradictions in this positioning. It's almost as if Fenriz is a university academic, when he says, we get older and realise that the modern metal sucks so much that we actually start liking a lot of the stuff that we didn't think was cool back in the 1980s. It's weird, but I would rather listen to some badly played but charming heavy metal act than a really fantastic production from the so-called black metal world. So Dark Throne have become more authentic, more true as they've grown older by retreating into their childhoods essentially, and when they were older children, younger teenagers. But for some of the bands, it's about becoming respectable. So Immortal, True, Burzum, Retreat, Dark Throne, Reinvention. For the other bands in my study, it's all about trying to be something different, trying to be something that demonstrates to the world of music that they are no longer merely a black metal band, but actually what they're doing is something artistic, something creative, something that demonstrates that they are proper musicians. So Ulver have moved from being a black metal band into a band that has a wide range of pop and dance music influences. And they do have a fan base in alternative music, so their new albums are kind of reviewed in Zero Tolerance and Terrorizer, but this kind of engagement with the black metal scene is always kind of played down by Ulver, and what they want to do is say we've actually kind of moved away from these crazy teenagers, and now we're serious musicians doing something a bit different. So here's Christopher from Ulver saying, we were in truth part of the rise of black metal guys, but it kind of played out as soon as it started to pick up a huge following. Something got lost there, and certainly my interest in it got lost somehow. I don't really identify with any kind of notion of black metal as it's perceived now. Maybe it's because I've changed so much. It was quite different then, and was charged by youth as well. Our music might be more mellow, but I would say an album like Shadows is both negative and dark. So for Ulver, they're using what I call Habermasian communicative rationality to shape their public image as independent artists, seeking a mature goal of musical creativity and satisfaction. And you can see similar discussions around Mayhem. So in an interview with Attila from Mayhem, the lead singer, he talked about the need to challenge the stereotypes of black metal and to, what he says, to work on side projects, to push the boundaries, to create something new and challenging, both for you and the listener. So Mayhem have abandoned the corpse paint, the spikes, they've abandoned the flirtation with fascism, abandoned the out-and-out cartoon Satanism, the kind of Satanism that's as true as Iron Maiden being Satanists when they released Number of the Beast. And for Attila and Mayhem now, Mayhem is an avant-garde theatrical performance, a production that for them is more true to black metal's roots than the kind of the cartoon Satanism and stern faces of the 1990s. So Mayhem are working hard at their intentionality, their intentionality to stay accepted in the scene while at the same time distancing themselves from the pantomime. So that's one way in which these bands surviving. Finally, the band Enslaved are interesting to me. First of all, I confess Enslaved are my favourite extreme metal band at the moment. I'm wearing an Enslaved t-shirt right now. And Enslaved's evolution in the scene, Enslaved's place in the scene, I should say, was completely as insiders. They were in the Norwegian black metal scene, they were in Bergen, they were in connection with Euronymous and the Helvetii scene around the Helvetii shop in Oslo. So Enslaved were part of this scene, but even back when they were releasing their first demos, they were moving away from being Satanists into exploring Viking, pagan, heathen themes. So as each kind of record has appeared, more and more of this paganism has appeared, but also alongside that, more and more progression. And especially in the last 10 years or so, since the album Isa, is it Isa or Isa? It's Isa. Isa's things that we sell in the United Kingdom, banks sell them as savings accounts. That's why I'm getting confused. You say Isa, I say Isa. But since they released that album, they've become completely progressive, dark but progressive. And in becoming dark and aggressive, they've also become, as a progressive, creative, cultural force, they've also become accepted in Norwegian government circles. So they've been funded by government agencies. They've been given the Norwegian equivalent of the Grammys for their musics. In their publicity shots, they stand in snow, but there's no sign of corpse paint or studs or spikes. So Ivar Bjornsson, in an interview in Terrorizer, is asked what it feels like to be winning critical acclaim for his music from legitimate organisations outside the black metal scene, the establishment. He says, "It feels awesome. It's the best place that we could be. That's what we want with our music, to maintain, to feel that you kept your integrity intact, and at the same time to be able to reap the rewards. It's something every expressionist/artist wants. People like the band because of reasons that we feel really comfortable with. We've never compromised or done anything that we feel we shouldn't have done." So Enslave, they're a band that's grown out of posturing in the black metal scene, but they also feel the need to say that they maintain that link. So for Bjornsson, there is a legitimate communicative purpose to the band and his music. Even though you might question whether the shift to progressive metal might actually be a commercial decision, because certainly it's done them no harm. They're selling more records, they're selling more tour tickets, they're selling more t-shirts on the back of this shift to that post-Pink Floyd, post-ISIS sound. So this paper shows how intentionality creates public discourse, discourses of age, ageing and maturity in the black metal scene. All the black metal musicians and bands in my case study have grown older while losing fans, keeping fans, or gaining new fans. All of them have to make decisions about how to present their position within the scene, and their own position as aging black metal musicians in a scene that emerged from teenagers rebelling against their Northern European upbringings. So what this case study shows is the complex way in which individuals choose to establish a sense of that position and that age role. So for some in the scene, it's business as usual, a revitalised youth and a black metal posture that lives on untouched by the ravages of time, even though Demonass from Immortal is now too ill to play the guitar on stage. But for others, their ageing has become a way of reinventing their past and denying or reappraising their younger selves. So Vikernes from Burzum insists that he's authentic because he denies his black metal teenage self. And Fenris of Darkthrone puts on a show of making out his younger self was a mirror image of the older Fenris. Finally, others in the scene have become respectable and are happy to position their bands and their intentional selves as belonging to a mature, serious music scene that counts grant funding and reviews outside the metal press more important than continuing to worship Satan. This case study has implications for understanding how people use leisure to defy ageing. The stereotype of the 50-year-old banker buying a Harley to fool himself into thinking he still has it is so well worn as to invite no more comment. All of us use our communicative rationality to construct social identities that we think protect us from the fact of biology. Chris Rojek suggests that aging is something we choose to do. We can go to the bingo as a 35-year-old and become our grandparents, or we can carry on listening to punk, to metal, to rap music into our 60s, arguing to ourselves that we're never too old to raise the horns. There's the horns, where are we? There's the camera, raise the horns. but intentionality is an illusion when it comes to aging. We can pass as middle class easy enough, though our appropriation of the right cultural capital, the right clothes, the right pastimes and opinions, we can possibly play at gender, appropriating the correct leisure activities that allow us to demonstrate, to blur our femininity or masculinity. Young people might even pretend to be old beyond their time. The British Conservative Party politician William Hague was so precocious as a teenager. He was delivering speeches at the Conservative Party conference at the age of 16. But we cannot be intentional in our identity so easily as our bodies become old, because we become old. We lose our youth. So the black metal musicians in the case study are treading a fine line between authenticity, staying true to the satanic far-right ideology of the scene, and becoming a joke amongst young metal fans. That's it, I'll end it there for questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Karl. I think that we probably will have a lot of questions and remarks today. Would you like to start, Vitos?
Yes, actually, I would prefer to just wait a little bit because I have a rather big question. So I think we should wait.
You have a big question.
Yeah, and I'll just sharpen it a little bit before I ask it.
Okay, does anyone have a small question with which to start? Okay, Jarl.
Well, it relates to your to the title of the talk with raising the horns. Is there unity about what the horns means? I mean, if it was satanic, you would do something. Kan du inden kameraet mod mig? You would do something like that. That's satanic. That would be Pan. The sign for Pan. This that you did. What does it mean in black metal?
In heavy metal, that, where are we? Where's the camera?
You're not on camera, no. There you are.
Yes. That is just what people in metal do to each other. There's no... People say it's Satan, but most metal fans now use that, and they're not even black metal people. It's just become so ubiquitous in society. Maybe it should be banned. I've seen pop stars raising the horns. The horns just came from Ronnie James Dio, who started to use them when he was fronting Black Sabbath and then his own band Dio. And he just got it apparently because it was something his grandmother did to ward off the devil. So he was doing it, you know, this is what my grandma showed me, but then everyone else kind of went, oh yeah, cool, it looks like the devil, and it's got horns. So the horns have just become a vaguely kind of satanic symbol.
But Jarl's question, I think, was does it make any subtle difference where the thumb is? If the thumb is sticking out or if the thumb is wrapped around the palm, you know?
Maybe there is, but I'm not aware of it.
Okay. Okay. Yes.
I have a comment. There's the story that with the thumb out, that's Gene Simmons' sign from Kiss, and with the thumb in, that's Ronnie James Dio's.
Okay, but the thumbs out is the sign for the devil.
And the thumb in, as you're saying, is the sign for Pan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Ronnie James Dio's grandmother told him that the horns were for avoiding evil eyes. She was from Sicily,
that's
I believe.
true also.
Yeah. So we have a very complex semiotic, obviously, going on with the horns here. Maybe that's worth a paper, Karl.
It may well be. I've resisted kind of writing about the horns because I don't know too much about their origins and their use in other cultures, other religions or sects. It's not some. I'm not an anthropologist of religion, so I couldn't say where these things actually come from or how they're actually used. What I can say is, in heavy metal, to my knowledge, most of the bands who claim to be satanic aren't actually satanic. Well, you know, they might read a copy of Anton LaVey's book, or they might read something on Wikipedia, but you know, they're not actually practicing Satanism. They just want to be because it sounds good, it sounds evil. The pagans and heathens, I think, are a bit more sophisticated in their adoption of Wiccan philosophy or Hasidic philosophies, and you know, the kind of Northern European stuff. But for me, it's all a kind of an appropriation, just to kind of denote evilness or northernness or, you know, Europeanness.
Okay. Yes, Vitus.
Okay, so perhaps Cynthia, you should just move the camera so Karl can see the audience.
Yes, let's do that.
Okay, that's good. Okay, thank you very much, Karl. So this is Vitus speaking. It was a very interesting introduction to this phenomenon of aging and metal. And my question is also related to this phenomenon, bands and band members getting older. And I'm sorry if it's a broad question, but you can just narrow it down yourself if you want to. But my question is something like, it seems to me there is a tendency with metal fans that old bands are good and we like the older version of the band more than the newer version of the band. So people like old Metallica, but they don't like new Metallica. And people like Moonspell when they made their first album, but they don't like Moonspell now, and so on. So it's not it's not a rule, but it seems to me that there is a tendency that people, at least people who want some sort of, in their own eyes, true metal, they look to the old band, to the early releases. So so my question is twofold. First of all, do you think that there is such a tendency? And second of all, if there is such a tendency, do you have any sort of explanation for that? Would the very first albums of the band or the very first concerts be defining for a band or for a band member, or how would you explain that phenomenon, if it in fact is a real phenomenon?
Well, I think you're right. In answer to the first question, it's true. I think metal fans do go for the first albums or the first kind of set of classic albums of a band that's kind of made a name for itself. Why you do this? I do think people are looking for something true, something authentic, and I think people believe first albums, second albums people made when they were younger have more fire. So bands get mature, and when bands get mature, they run out of ideas. You know, we're academics, and you know, we write research papers, and we write books, and we write grant bids, and after a while, you know, even us, you know, we start to think, well, okay, well, what happens next? There's only so many times I can say the same stuff about leisure before I'm repeating myself and losing my inspiration. So I think everybody goes through that as a creator. So I think some bands do reach that stage where they're struggling. I think some bands also get into that stage where they signed record deals and they're with major labels or producers, right, or managers who push them down a route that makes their music all of a sudden uncool or unfashionable.
Right.
Or even worse, the musicians choose to kind of release a 12-minute jazz odyssey, like Spinal Tap, and then all of a sudden they lose their fans because people want Metallica to sound like Metallica sound. And so if Metallica don't sound like that band in those classic first 3 or 4 albums,
right,
then people won't listen to them.
Right. Okay, thank you. So would you say that some bands actually grow too old, or they? How would you put it? Is it possible for a band to become too old to actually raise the horns? Do some bands outlive themselves in the eyes of the fans or in the eyes of the people?
I think in the eyes of the fans, there's a real danger that bands who don't navigate their way through this storm of getting old and progressing or losing their authenticity, I think there's a real danger that those bands will disappear, and they have done. Bands do disappear. Bands split up. Bands kind of giving the ghost all the time. It's only the really big ones who are paying for divorce bills and an extra kind of private jet. They're the ones who are, feeling the need to churn out album after album because it's how they make their money.
Okay, so one final follow-up question, if I may. So do you differentiate, or rather, how do you differentiate between a musician and a band? So is it possible? Is there a difference? For instance, could a band grow too old, but the musician still be young, or could a band be still fresh, but one of the musicians is actually not young and fresh anymore, or how do you put the fine line between what's a band's identity and the identity of a musician? Do you understand what I mean with the question? Yes.
I think it's perfectly possible that you could have a band surviving and all the members are replaced. Maybe Kiss might be the band that does that in kind of mainstream rock.
Right.
It's, but for extreme metal bands, and black metal bands especially, it's youthness is part of their appeal. To be angry and satanic and anti-authority, that comes from being a rebel, from being a punk.
Right.
And youth is associated with that. As people get older, they've got families, they've got real jobs. They have to kind of balance all these things. So inevitably, people are going to say, right, I'm not going to be in a death metal band anymore. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to become a DJ down my local club.
Okay.
So let me interrupt for one quick comment, because we've been joined by 3 more participants, and perhaps you'd like to meet them. Claudia, would you like to introduce yourself to Karl? Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. I'm associate professor in Latin American and Spanish literature and culture, and I research about the sublimity and maybe the opposites in metal.
So, and Claudia is part of our little core research group here, the performances of everyday living. So, good to see you again, Claudia. Then we have Daniel with us from Finland, yes?
Yes, hi, and of course we haven't met.
Hello, Daniel.
So yeah.
How are you?
I'm doing great. I was a bit late though, because of the bus that I missed on my way home from my work. So, but
any excuse.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then Ariana, I'm sorry we got you called in a minute or 2 late, but would you please introduce yourself as well? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Adriana. I'm writing a thesis at the moment in performance design, and I'm focusing on the black metal scene. So, yeah, that's why I'm here.
And Ariane is with us from Roskilde, yes?
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, okay, from Eastern Denmark. So, and just for the sake of good order, for the 3 new participants, you agree that it's okay if your image appears on the YouTube video and what you say appears on it? Yes? Okay.
Yeah.
Daniel?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
excellent. Okay, let us continue. Now that we've engaged the people out in Skype land, do either of you have any comments or questions at this point in our discussion?
I do.
Okay.
What is your take on this, like, third generation of, black metal bands such as, I don't know, Death Heaven or Altesse for that matter, and the identity and authenticity within black metal?
Well, my own personal taste is I quite like the sound of Alcest. I quite like acoustic music, soft music, sounds good to me. Death Heaven, I don't like at all. That's just my personal opinion. My academic opinion of this change to black metal, this third wave, this post-black metal, this kind of hipsterish turn is, I think this is the end, potentially, of black metal as a reactionary, transgressive, extreme black metal as it used to be back in the 1990s and the 2000s. Shoegazing is fine for muso people like me, maybe some of the people in Denmark in the seminar room. Maybe we quite like, soft music that makes us feel happy. But that's not black metal. Black metal is about being angry. If it's not angry, if it's not filled with hatred for modernity, hatred for the modern world and everything in it, for me it kind of loses its communicative edge and it just becomes just one other musical form. The hipster black metal turn I'm also very sceptical about academically. For those who don't understand, Death Heaven represent an attempt in America to kind of take over the black metal scene by saying black metal isn't actually about evil, it's not actually about transgression, it's just about individual transcendence and spirituality, and we can take this over, and we're not going to be stereotypes, we're not going to sing anything about Satan, we're just going to have interesting music that helps people meditate and become a better person. Now, everybody can do what they like, obviously, that's but academically I think this causes a big threat to black metal because hipsters are fashionable, and what's a hipster fashion today won't be a hipster fashion tomorrow. People in extreme metal, I think, are more sticky in their subcultural affiliations. Born a punk, become a punk in 1977, you're still a punk. I was speaking to a punk who went to his first punk gig in 1977 in a club in Leeds, and he's still a punk. Still has the attitude of being a punk and being alternative, and that's carried through his entire life. I think metal, we're kind of the same. People in metal, we kind of remain fully committed to metal somehow. We're always identifying ourselves as being metal and being somehow against the mainstream, whatever that is. Even though heavy metal is a popular cultural form that is part of the mainstream. But hipsters don't stick. Hipsters won't stay with black metal for much longer. And when they do, they might have driven people like us out.
Yeah, and why do you think that it's become popular to, be labeled as black metal or post-black metal, whatever, or to wear, mayhem t-shirts. I've seen popular groups or hip hop groups that are wearing Burzum t-shirts or mayhem. Why do you think it has become cool? Because it's very anti-black metal, and doesn't coexist with the identity of black metal.
You're completely right. It does go, everything about this kind of hipster turn is against what black metal used to stand for and still stands for. But the hipsters want to be part of black metal because they want to be associated. They want to have the frisson of that dangerous transgression. They want to be associated with Nazis and church burners and Satanists and killers. Because it sounds cool. Who wouldn't want to say, hey, I'm listening to this really interesting band, Burzum, who are these people, this guy who killed this guy and he was in prison and he turned out a Nazi. It's a sexy story and everybody, when they hear it, go hard. That sounds crazy, but at the same time, a little bit exciting. So hipsters want to be associated with that, but they want to be associated with a kind of a blander version. It's like a diet version of black metal.
Yeah.
I'm glad we agree.
Any more remarks, Adriana?
Not so far. Maybe later.
Well, just feel free to let us know. Daniel, do you have any comments or questions?
Well, I actually missed a lot of it, so I actually only came in when Vitus was asking a quick question earlier, so I haven't actually followed a lot of it, but a quick question that you kind of hinted at a bit already. With this new American third wave of black metal, do you I'm not really familiar with it at all, but is it also from on the mere sound of it, is it actually way different from the old school black metal bands?
Some is and some is and some isn't. I think some of those bands have made a decision to stick to the kind of the musical formula of second wave black metal, but for others it's a deliberate kind of reaction against that, or a progression from it. So it's a bit hit and miss.
Okay, thanks.
Do we have... Yes, Mons.
Well, yes, first of all, thank you very much for your presentation. I liked it. And then secondly, you have to realize that we are on very various and different levels of the knowledge of heavy metal in this group. I, for one, doesn't know very much about it and have difficulties in distinguishing the various genres and things like that from each other, so you have to forgive me if what I say is completely crazy. But what I am interested in is has to do with authenticity, or rather identity, with what these people, whether they're old or young, actually say and express, and what they are as people. Because one of the observations I've done meeting people within the metal culture is that they're very peaceful, actually. They might be rebellious and they might sort of like the rebellious expression, but I think there's a very big difference between people who burn down churches and are just at the verge or the brink of committing murder, and then the general performer of metal and even fan. Don't you think that?
Yeah, absolutely. The average kind of heavy metal fan is a perfectly normal, well-adjusted, fairly middle class,
yes,
fairly well-educated person who's quite liberal, quite secular, quite individualistic, and that's the politics, that's the ideology that's at the heart of metal. You know, everybody's an individual. We want to be seen as individuals. We're perfectly normal. we're perfectly normal members of the world. We just listen to this music that you don't like. And that's the kind of the way that metal fans split themselves from the mainstream, that we listen to this music that others don't like or understand. But that's the only amount of kind of anti-establishmentness that's associated with heavy metal. Heavy metal is just a form of popular music. It's part of the popular music industry. It's only been around since the 1970s, 60s, 70s. So it's just one form of pop music that may survive, it may not survive, it will change, but it's definitely not transgressive in any meaningful way. It's just music that is played, created by that same form of hegemonic global capitalism.
Yeah. Because I'm so old that I was originally a fan of Black Sabbath and Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin and all those before the era of Pink Floyd and Jethro Tull and things like that. But I liked sort of the early things when and I felt if we should talk a bit about the rationality of listening to this kind of music, I felt that very much alive listening through it. So and that is the opposite of death, for instance. So I think there is, and because I'm interested in it because this all this difference between the way people present themselves, the way they perform. There are more personas. I mean, these artists of heavy metal than there are actually individuals on the stage. And that, I mean, because what I know about is modernism, and I think that there are many features in heavy metal that can actually be seen as interpretations of modernism, although you say that they rebel against modern society and modernity, but modernism as being an sort of interpretation of modern conditions, I find that's what strikes me with metal, that you have this about also not only interest of mythology, but also what you could call mythical experience, that you experience things in peaks rather than in a narrative continuity. I think all these things I find present in metal and things that I like. Am I completely wrong there? Or?
Well, I think black metal is anti-modern.
Yes.
So the kind of the extreme ideologies in black metal are a reaction against modern society. I think mainstream heavy metal is completely kind of co-opted into modernity.
Yeah.
And you know, because it is just entertainment. It makes people happy. It makes people forget their worries. It tells people that you know the world is a better place, and you know there is a hope for us all. If only we all got together and banged our heads, there'd be no war. There's been countless magazine articles about Orphanland, the Israeli heavy metal band, going around with a Palestinian heavy metal band on tour, and kind of trying to kind of reach out beyond Israel to Turkey and Egypt and other countries where heavy metal is kind of popular. So some people do see heavy metal as being all about bringing on liberal, Western, democratic change to countries around the world. So there is that side to heavy metal. So I agree completely.
But you think that it has a political agenda. It's not only about feeling alive and things like that. They want to change the world. That's not my experience.
Well, no. I don't think most metal fans are there thinking, "Oh, let's change the world." But I think people who write about metal music, people who some of the musicians who set out to kind of construct metal music and metal genres do have a kind of a quasi ideological agenda.
Okay, good. Yeah. But black metal is the real deal.
people in black metal will say they are the real deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to just raise a few issues and sort of see where they go, Karl, because I'm also coming to this as quite a newbie. I really only began to listen to metal at all about 8 years ago, and actually it was very much the fault of Daniel and Vitus, who happened to come to some lectures in a philosophy of music course I had, and then I made the offhand remark that, okay, we've been talking about some of these mainline issues in aesthetics, among which beauty is a very big sort of a theme. Why don't we now talk about some music that most people regard as, say, flat out ugly? And I stood there and I said, for example, what about metal? And then half the room sort of sat up in their seats and then very politely began to explain to me that I had no idea what I was talking about and that this was very interesting music. And actually, I enjoyed listening to them telling me I didn't know what I was talking about because they did it so well, and the discourse was so refined. And then Daniel gave an excellent PowerPoint presentation, and then Vitus and Daniel and someone else got involved in this very heavy-duty discussion. And I said, wait a minute, this sort of discourse is not discourse that I would call pop music talk. And that's what I wanted to sort of now re-enter what you said. You said, okay, metal's a kind of popular music, etc., etc. What has struck me and what has made me personally now want to get to know more about this kind of music, listen to it, and then, for lack of a better word, understand it in some kind of way, is that it seems to be produced, it seems to be listened to, and it seems to engender a kind of seriousness that I don't recognize in what you just sort of generally call pop music. As a matter of fact, the kind of discourse reminds me much more of the kind of discourse that sort of serious aestheticians have conducted about Viennese classicism or classical music throughout the generations. So I think let's revisit what you said about how, oh well, it's a part of pop music, etc., etc. Do you find what I'm saying to sound like a misunderstanding, that there's a kind of seriousness about it all that is lacking in other kinds of, say, popular music expression?
Okay, is the music serious? Yes, it is. And musicians who make heavy metal music genuinely believe that what they're doing has artistic credit.
Excuse me one second. When we're saying heavy metal now, are we talking about heavy metal as the... I know that there, among people who really know metal, heavy metal is a subgenre with subgenres. Are you using heavy metal now as the sort of general public, sense of covering all metal? Okay.
So generally heavy metal, the musicians who form bands and want to kind of make records, like all musicians who are pushed into kind of making music, they're passionate, they want to do it, they want to make a good job of it, they think what they do is completely serious, they think what they do is more aesthetically pleasing because they take their time making it, and they kind of eventually somehow get it out there, and for the makers of the music it is aesthetically valid, but there are similarities between how that music is critiqued, how that music is promoted, how that music is produced, how that music is consumed. There are similarities between pop music and heavy metal. In fact, they're exactly the same. The business models are, you've got record labels, you've got magazines, critics, or people on blogs, however it kind of works these days. You have deals with Apple to get your music into people's iPods You can do that if you're U2, quite easy to do. But if you're kind of a run-of-the-mill black metal band, you don't do that, because obviously that's kind of out of your reach. But you send your music to the equivalent of Apple. So, you know, an independent label or a fanzine or a blog that writes about black metal. So everybody creates the music thinking the music is their own work of creative art. That's why they do it. No one sits there thinking, I'm just going to produce some rubbish stuff now and just churn it out. I think most people in heavy metal are completely passionate about the authenticity of that aesthetic experience, but it's the consumption and it's the industry around it and the processes around it. That's where I say it's exactly the same. It's just part of pop music.
So just to be provocative,
I'm quite controversial saying this. Most metal music academics disagree with me completely.
Okay, well, my next question would be, just to be a little provocative, what you're saying is any music industry immune to the kinds of things you're talking about today? I mean, are there any genres of music that would exhibit significantly different behavior than what you just described in, say, 2015?
I think there's probably forms of community music where people are constructing music only for their own ends. So, you know, a choir getting together just in a village hall somewhere, just singing for the sake of singing, maybe some...
Exactly, but I'm thinking about, if you're talking about commercially available jazz or classical music or country western or whatever, do you think that the model you just described would look can we use your model to differentiate between these kinds of music? I'm curious.
Well, I would say they're just part of the pop music industry. If you get into the act of labels and critics and producers and the techniques of production that exist to construct these musical forms, then it's all part of the modern capitalist world. Unless you don't do it.
Just a pause for a minute. Hello, Stefan. Good to see you. Stefan has just joined us a bit late. Can you hear us? Stefan? Can you hear us? Yes. Okay, just checking, Stefan, it's all right with you that your image and voice are on the video that we'll be making of this?
That's fine.
Okay, very good. Would you just like to quickly introduce yourself to Karl?
Yes. My name is Stefan. I'm 32 years old. And I listen to metal.
Because you came late, you don't realize how relevant that comment actually was. Thank you, Stefan. But okay, just now, perhaps getting into somewhat nerdy territory and revealing that I come from, sort of philosophy of music. The mainstream philosophy of music, and then trying to understand and simply penetrate the metal scene a bit. It seems to me that a lot of the discourse to which I've been witness regarding metal always invokes a lot of sociological aspects and a lot of age aspects and a lot of associations to paganism or Satanism or something like that. What would you say to sort of a more, perhaps even old school mainstream philosophy of music attitude from analytic philosophy that would ask the question, okay, what about just dealing with the acoustic material and sitting down and listening to it? Do people do that kind of research on metal from that kind of aesthetic point of view? Because that is a kind of entry point that would be sort of interesting for me, and I'm wondering if there's anyone that I could use as a sort of inspiration for that, or if I just be sort of on my own, if I given my own, growing amount of, but still very, very newbie amount of, metal listening experience.
As it happens, I have a colleague who I've done research with on black metal called Mark Deeks. He's at the University of Leeds. He's just almost near the end of his PhD, not quite. He's a music theorist. He knows music inside out, and his PhD is about Viking metal and folk metal. And he does look at some of the kind of socio-cultural stuff, but he also does some of that philosophical analysis of the music as well. So he would be absolutely ideal. If you email me afterwards, I'll give you, I won't give it out on YouTube, his contact details. But there are loads of people in metal music studies who are looking at this. It's unfortunate that I'm not someone who knows anything about music here. I can play 4 or 5 chords very badly. Never been in a band. Never been able to sing. Never been in a studio, so I don't know anything about how music is actually put together.
But I'm not only talking about this from a musicological point of view, but from a philosophical point of view, where we're concerned with things such as meaning and expression and all that sort of thing. What can you hear in music? That kind of, all those things are sort of classic debates. And I guess what I'm fishing around for is. So that is not an unacceptable way of doing some sort of thinking about metal or listening to metal. Then it's just perhaps one that hasn't been forefronted within metal studies up to now. Would that be correct to say?
There are a couple of people. There's a guy in Germany who's done some of this. His name escapes me. I've got a PhD student who's just starting. And because he's just starting, he's not ready yet to kind of talk about any of this, but he will be doing some of that music philosophy, precisely exactly what you just said about trying to understand the meaning of chord progressions and how notes go from here. See, I told you I'm not musicological. How music goes from note A to note C, and what feelings or emotions they might be kind of evoking. Okay. So it is out there, and if you think it's not appeared in the journal Metal Music Studies, Cynthia, all you need to do is submit a paper to our journal.
Yes, and all I guess I'm just being kind of cowardly here. Sounding out would one appear to be a complete fool to go at it in this fashion, and it's I guess you're giving me the signal that it would not be considered to be completely off the mark.
It'd be fantastic.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Do it.
Very well. Vitus.
Yes. Okay. So Karl, if it's okay, I'd like to return to the questions about identity and authenticity, and perhaps the problems with managing identity and authenticity when you grow old and your band grows old and stuff like that. So one phenomenon that seems to me to be one way of managing identity and authenticity, and one phenomenon that is particularly prominent in black metal, it seems to me at least, is anonymity. So I would like to ask you about anonymity. For instance, there are a lot of black metal bands who are partly or fully anonymous. I mean, simply using pseudonyms and using corpse paint and different kinds of clothing. I mean, that could even be seen as partly being anonymous. But there are some bands that are fully anonymous. We don't even know their names. We haven't even seen pictures of them. In Denmark, we have In black metal, we have a new band called Serpent's Lair. They're fully anonymous. We have Nord. You might know Nord. He's very famous. He's been playing with Sastur and Scott Connor from Sastur. They made a record together, I think. I think it was a split album when I think about it. But anyways, he's quite famous, but he's totally anonymous. I think there's one image of him floating around, but he's in corpse paint. You can't really see who he is. But he's from this city. I know he's from this city, and I think I know who he is. But he's anonymous. And recently there was a record released in Denmark by a female one-woman band, also black metal, and the band is called Merkur, and nobody knew who she was, but of course it's difficult to stay anonymous, so people found out that she's a famous fashion model and she's the daughter of a pop musician, and this was of course very interesting to the fans, but there seems to me to be this tendency that at least some bands in black metal want to separate their sort of daily identity with their musical identity, and anonymity seems to be a big part of that. So I guess it's a rather broad question, but can you comment on that? Is that something you've noticed? Is it true that anonymity is a phenomenon, especially in black metal, one way to sort of manage identity and authenticity, and how do you think it relates to this problem you've described with bands evolving and so on?
Well, I think this is actually a really good idea if you're a musician or in a band. There's 2 or 3 of you in the band. It's a really good way of ensuring you don't get old and people don't see you as someone who's past it in the scene. So yeah, I have noticed, I've not done any research on this, but I have noticed reading the magazine Zero Tolerance, there's always something in there about underground black metal bands. And just recently there's been quite a few bands who are saying, we were around in the early 90s and we've reformed and here we are and this is what we're doing. And they are deliberately kind of not showing pictures of themselves because, you know, they're 45-year-old bankers or teachers or whoever they are. And this could be a trend because, yeah, I mean, to be anonymous was the whole point of the original second wave scene. You know, people had their nicknames, no one really knew who anybody was. This is kind of in pre-internet days, so, you know, you'd have to kind of write to people to find out about their music. And so no one really saw pictures of other people anyway. So yeah, I think if a band wants to start out and be anonymous and so anonymous that no one knows who they are, it's a great kind of marketing strategy and a good way of avoiding this problem of aging. But I think the problem remains for the bands who choose to be not anonymous. You know, the bands who do play live, the bands who don't use too much corpse paint, or, you know, they don't have a stage show that's over the top.
Right. Okay, thank you. Right.
But may I just shoot something in here before we go on to the next question? But that surely is something that that distinguishes metal behavior from most pop music type behavior, right? I mean, this whole anonymity aspect of it. I mean, it's rather hard to imagine most kinds of pop music performers or groups wanting to remain anonymous. I mean, isn't that something we could say is at least a hallmark of some subgenres in the metal scene?
Yeah, but very different approaches to anonymity. And in the kind of extreme black metal scene, anonymity is a way of kind of shutting yourself off from society, shutting yourself off from capitalism and the game and the industry. But if you look at pop music, who are the session musicians?
Okay.
There's a bunch of anonymous people making money. playing music and often writing music for other people, the performers.
Point taken. Yeah.
Very kind of open. But I mean, the performers themselves, who knows, in a few years' time, when technology becomes so good, maybe the performers are going to be, computer images or something. We don't know. The perfect pop singer is someone who doesn't exist.
Okay, good. Point taken. Yes. Yeah.
Well, two things. First, for this topic, we have, I think they are called gorillas. They are cartoon figures and doesn't exist in real life. Pop.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow that, Jan.
We have a band, fictive band,
okay,
that only exists as cartoons. They are called gorillas.
Gorillas.
Okay.
But there was another subject I was interested in. Is it a problem for black metal that it has lost its scare for parents and so on? I mean, you can hear it from teenage rooms and you don't get scared, but if you hear the propaganda songs from Easy, you get very scared. Black metal is becoming accepted, and is that going to kill it off?
Yes, and yes. It has become accepted and it has lost its fire, and the danger is, unless something else changes, black metal is just part of heavy metal's history now. That's not to say that there won't be people performing black metal, consuming black metal, talking about black metal, but the real kind of anger and transgression and kind of non-conformity and resistance will be somewhere else in kind of extreme metal or rock or somewhere.
Yes, Vitos.
Yes, okay, so in relation to Jar's question, do you think that there will be a general tendency, or that there is a tendency that black metal fans then move to other genres? For instance, some of them could move to, what do I know, neo-folk or something like that. I mean, you mentioned Bach yourself, and he has moved to this kind of, I don't know even what he calls it anymore. He used to call it scaldic music, and now I think he calls it like prehistoric something music. So prehistoric ambient or something like that.
Prehistoric
so,
ambient?
I don't know if that's what he calls it, but that's what it's supposed to be. So do you think that people will move from the black metal genre to other genres? Because I think that Bach Veganist is a very interesting case, because I think that what he's doing now he's not doing black metal, and he's not identifying himself as a black metal person anymore. But I think that a lot of the things he's doing has some roots in his earlier life as a black metal musician. I mean, I can totally see where his survivalism fits in with all of it, and he's very interested in guns and living in the wild and all that. I can see where it fits in. So do you think that there will be a tendency, or there is a tendency that some people will move away from black metal into other musical genres, like, for instance, ambient or neo-folk or what do I know?
Yeah, I think that's already happened, and I think if you look at other genres, so look at punk, look at goth, and how they changed. So punk in the 1970s and goth in the 1980s, you always get the people who want to be part of this authentic scene all of a sudden realise that the music has got too big, too popular, it's lost its edge, and they move on and find something else. So musicians are always going to be looking for something new as musicians. But then fans are also going to be looking for something new as fans too. And the reality is, nobody listens exclusively to black metal. I'd like to say I do, but I don't. One of my favourite bands is Supertramp.
This side of the room, the other side of the room by the door has been very quiet. Do any of you have any comments?
Well,
yes, let me get the camera up here so we can see.
I would like to reflect about the carnivalistic attitude of metal shows and performances presented as an aesthetical rebellion. Don't you think that it's contradictory with this research of authenticity?
Sorry, say that again, I didn't quite catch that.
Well, I reflect about the carnivalistic attitude of metal. So, all that they show and performances, they have a big carnival on the scene. And I think that is a little contradictory with the research of authenticity. Yeah.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, so you've got the performances on stage are just a kind of inauthentic display. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's a pantomime. It's just blowing fire, being burnt by fire, upside down crosses.
Yes.
Pigs' heads on sticks and all that. Fantastic, but it is just pantomime. And there are some black metal bands who reacted against the corpse paint, the spikes, the flames, and the pigs' heads, precisely because they realise it's just like a pantomime. So there's a British black metal band called Winter Phillip I've done some research with. They've deliberately appeared on stage and in publicity shots just dressed like normal people in the streets. And their view is, well, you know, we've got nothing against the people who are dressed up in corpse paint, but we don't think that's what we do.
Okay. Because sometimes, in some way, they construct a sort of ambiguity. You can define when they are really themselves. Because when am I me, with or without makeup? It poses this question. The person that works in a bank, and in the afternoon he has a band, a metal band. That poses this problem. When I can find the authenticity in this person?
Well, authenticity is almost impossible to define, because it's if we try and say where's the kind of authentic metal musician or metal fan, in truth there isn't. I mean, it's just one person through time with a lot of different tastes and adventures, whose opinions change, whose clothing changes, whose music changes, and everybody kind of is in that permanent state of flux. But for the metal fans, and especially for black metal fans, authenticity is important. So people will judge other people, you know, on whether or not they know the name of a particular obscure band. So, you know, if I mention the band Winter Phillip in kind of British circles, knowing who they are gives me kudos, you know, because I know the name of that band and I can say, yeah, I like that band. But but it is completely subjective and completely irrational. So people will say, yeah, such and such a band is authentic because they're proper Satanists, and another band is only pretending to be satanic. But actually, everybody's kind of playing, and no one's really taking it seriously.
Sure, thank you very much.
Any more comments from Harboe? Would you like to?
I was thinking that maybe this authenticity is could be related to alter ego of musicians. Because I mean there are examples in other genres of music that the musician part is kind of an expression of alter ego of the person.
So musicians do, I agree, musicians do feel what they're doing is true, otherwise they wouldn't be doing it. By definition, they'd be doing something else. Is that what you're saying?
In a way,
Yeah.
Did you have Lisa did.
Yeah, I just have a comment because to me there is a difference between the music part and the subculture lifestyle part. Those two are intertwined, but they're not equal, if you know what I mean. So to me, I think most people will grow out of the subculture and lifestyle, but will be stuck in the music that reminded them of the lifestyle or the subculture they were in when they were younger. So it's not a question, it's just a comment.
Yeah, I mean, people's lives are kind of soundtracked. As fans, we associate music with particular periods in our lives, particular people, particular relationships, particular jobs. And with all the technology available to us, it's much easier to carry these memories around in our pockets. I'm quite old-fashioned. I'm only just getting into the idea that you can play an MP3 player and carry it around with you. So it's great for me all of a sudden to be kind of running around listening to these kind of old black metal classics, and it kind of reminding myself of my younger days. But this comes at a price, I think. If everybody is just carrying around an MP3 collection of every single piece of music they've ever played, I think people do lose connection with this other space, this other subcultural space, where it's not just the music, as you said. It's about fashion. It's about friendships. It's about getting drunk. It's about getting up to all sorts of adventures, going to gigs. And I think all popular music cultures are in danger of losing those subcultural spaces.
Yes, Vitos.
Yes, okay. So, thank you again, Karl. It's very interesting. So I have one more question for you. You've been talking about the move of black metal into more mainstream or the third wave of, we could call it, I think you called it hipster black metal or something like that. So that being a potential threat to the genre. So my question is this: how do you think about the academic treatment of metal or black metal? Because one thing is to sort of drag black metal into the mainstream, but another thing is to drag black metal into a world of academia. So do you think that actually also poses a threat to the genre? Because I mean, we are at the Faculty of Humanities, and I mean, I must admit that sometimes in the Faculty of Humanities, things get over-analyzed and sometimes analyzed to the point where it actually just dies. So do you think that there is a real threat to black metal to take it into an academic sphere too?
Yes, not just black metal, but heavy metal too.
Yes.
I do worry that the metal music studies movement, if it's not careful, will destroy heavy metal.
Right.
And I actually find it really encouraging when whenever we've mentioned the journal or someone's done something somewhere, you get these kind of posters underneath on the comments pages going, "Oh, you can all fuck off, you're nothing to do with us, get away from us, you don't know anything, how dare you kind of talk, you don't know shit."
Right.
And that's great. That's great. It's good that people react so much that they're willing to defend it. As an academic, it's my job to interrogate leisure activities. And I don't just look at heavy metal and music. I've written extensively about rugby league. I've written about what else have I written about? I've written about the internet. I've written about so many things I can't even remember them. And I do this because, for me, leisure is a legitimate part of human life and a legitimate part of academic study. What we have to do is, when we kind of put our critical focus on a genre of music like heavy metal, is we need to be aware as academics that we are truthful to what we see, but we don't kind of just turn it into either into a hagiography where all we do is talk about how brilliant heavy metal is. I'm really waiting for someone to send me a paper to Metal Music Studies that begins by saying heavy metal is a load of rubbish, and just make that contrary case. For black metal, I'm also particularly concerned about black metal theory and the way this movement has adopted black metal as its music of choice, because all they're doing is making wordplay and over-analysing black metal to a point where, frankly, I find their writing incoherent, and not all of it, but a lot of it I find is just incoherent, self-analytical, navel-gazing rubbish, and I just wish they weren't so dominant.
It's a shame that Edie Canol isn't with us, because she was going to be here this afternoon, and she gave a talk last week. So it would have been interesting to hear what kind of, maybe we can somehow get the two of you in dialogue.
That would be fantastic. I'd love to have that. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I know Edie. We're in contact via Facebook. So I do know her and her work. But the black metal theory movement, essentially what it's done is taken this very kind of it's not meant to be kind of analysed. It's meant to be. It's quite simple. We're angry, and we're telling you that we're angry, and it's just been kind of over-analysed for the purposes of someone else's academic career or careers.
Well, I think I hear the debate coming on. Perhaps it looks as if our spring slate is full, but maybe we should have a little discussion in the fall. Could we have a debate perhaps between Karl and Edie? That could be quite fascinating.
Yes, that could be very interesting.
Shall we think about that? We'll have to get in touch with Edie and see. This could be very good. We haven't actually. That's a format we haven't tried yet. Having people on Skype debating with each other. So that may be something that we'll do for the fall. Well, this might be a good place to round off here. Thank you very much, Karl. Your theme provided a sort of a what should we say, a red thread, and then we segued back and forth. But frankly, my feeling is that many of us got to ask some questions that have been brewing as we have been trying to figure out a lot of these balance questions. You know, should we be feeling guilty about being academics tramping into the whole area of metal studies. Does it already sort of disqualify us as being people who ever could listen in some sort of a true way to the music? And I think that a lot of things that were said today will allow us to move forward and have some, what you would say, more coherent ideas about what this group could be trying to achieve, sitting here at the University of Southern Denmark. And it's a shame you can't see Vitus's exhibition. You can see some somewhat superficial presentation of it on our YouTube channel, because I was able to run around and photograph it. So that will give you an idea. But if you should find yourself in Denmark before the end of May, and certainly I'm sure Vitus would be happy to give you a tour.
Definitely, yes.
Okay, Karl, once again, thank you so much. And do you think that you could perhaps be a guest once in a while at our seminar? It would be fun. You could, just like the people who you see on the side of the screen, you could be a participant. Next week we have Keith Conn-Harris, who will be our speaker.
I know Keith very well. Yeah. I know everything he's got to say about heavy metal. I've just been editing a chapter of his.
I see. Very good. Okay. Well, once again, thank you very much, Karl, and you're welcome any Thursday you would like to join us. And we certainly have appreciated this seminar today, and we do hope we'll see you again. So,
it's been good fun. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, we're signing off here from Odense. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Okay.